Good morning, everyone. Clearly I don't sound like Mark Thompson, which is actually a plus. But I'm here today. I'm filling in for Mark Thompson, who's out on assignment, doing dope stuff. And this is Make It Plain, time to get woke on this Tuesday morning. For those who are wondering, my name is Jamira Burley, and I am, all around dope. And so sometimes I fill in for Mark when he has to go do the real work. But I'm excited to be here. We're gonna pretend like he's no. He's see. Why is he? Nope.
I'm not even supposed to be here because she don't like me to listen when she's on the air. But welcome to her.
But yet you're
gone.
here.
I know, but I'm just trying to hook you up. She's on social media too, y'all. If y'all want
Yes.
to see her, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, Make It Plain.
All of it. So
All
you
of
can
it.
join the conversation because we're going to discuss some very heavy topics today, including, what's going on in Alabama, what's going on with the Me Too movement, what's going on with your crazy boy Trump. But before we get started, I think it's really important to recognize that after yesterday's event on the New York train, I think we're all feeling a little bit more cautious about how we move throughout our day. But I'm wishing everyone good luck on their commute. So whether you're going to school or to work, or just to go handle your business, the hustle's real. I'm here and I am sending you prayers and good vibes and hoping that this Tuesday morning works out well for everyone. Because, love trumps hate in more ways than one. And I think we can't let terror or terrorism stop us from living our lives because that's exactly the purpose of it. But I want to talk about a number of things that I think have been taking over the media circuit, including what's happening with a number of our politicians being called out for sexual harassment and just, men in general in power who clearly, don't know how to keep it in the pants. Don't know how to take no for an answer, or don't know how not to ask their employees to be their surrogates for their children. Pretty creepy, right? Like offering your employee $5 million. I don't know. I might have had to consider it because the way these Sallie Mae loans are acting up, it definitely makes you think a little bit twice about these decisions. But I'm super excited to be here. And if you want to join the conversation, again, you can always call in to be a part of the action. We're going to have two great guests on a little bit later. And Mark is going to join us later also on air to talk about where he's at, raising awareness for that. We'll talk about that later. But our first guest up is going to be a longtime activist who is doing some amazing work, and particularly is in one of the states that I think is going to lay the foundation for the soul of America, depending on today's action. And that's Alabama. They are in the process of voting for a Congress member who is going to fill a seat. And this Congress member, the two options up for Congress is very polarizing. I think one decision will be a decision for someone who was a civil rights leader, someone who fought for justice for the four little girls who were killed in the bombing. Another is a accused sex offender, someone who has targeted children, particularly young girls in malls, have even been banned from some malls. And it's going to be an interesting discussion, I think, and a clear reflection on what's happening in America, depending on who wins in this Alabama election. And today we'll know, right? And so I'm excited to be joined by our first guest of the day, which is Kenny Sharpton Glasgow, who has been a longtime activist and organizer, particularly organizing individuals who have returned citizens. We like to call them individuals who have been formerly incarcerated by our justice system, and who continues to work, I think, on behalf of those who are less likely to receive resources and opportunities to let their voices be heard, particularly in the political process. And so I'm super excited to have him here because he's, like I mentioned, a longtime activist and continues to do the work. Kenny, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Hi, how are you?
I'm tired.
It's early, and I'm so sorry that we have you up this early. But I mean, today is a very important day. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yes, most definitely.
So tell us, why are you in Alabama, and what do you see as some of the kind of the most important issues that you see coming out of the election that are going to either tip the scale in one direction or the other?
Well, one of the most important issues that's going to really tip the scale in this election is going to be women issues.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of women feel violated and very, very invaluable because of the acts of Roy Moore as well as the acts of President Donald Trump. So that's what happened last night. There was a rally that was hosted by the handmaids, and I was invited to that rally along with a few others, and we was out there from 6 o'clock to about 9 o'clock rallying, and I didn't even know if I was going to have a voice to be able to talk to y'all this morning. So that's going to be one of the most important issues. Another hot button is health care. With the tax referendum that just went down, healthcare is still on the hot button, as well as, felony issues, formerly incarcerated, currently incarcerated issues, since Roy Moore chose to attack me personally by being the champion of that and the one that got the lawsuit in 2008 where they could vote out of prison in Alabama. I really don't know why. We've been doing this since 2003, won the lawsuit in 2008, and been waiting on a definition for 9 years, and finally got it. So I don't understand why he think it's just pertaining to him. We've been doing this. But those are just some of the issues that's really going to tip the scales here.
And, I'm going to return back to, I think, the issues surrounding women issues in a second. But I think what's important about the work that you're doing specifically is around the country, many individuals who have been formerly incarcerated have been disenfranchised in their ability to actually be a part of the political process. And the amount of individuals who have been previously incarcerated, who are incarcerated, could really tip the scale in so many different elections if they were given the right to vote. Why do you feel politicians push back so hard against individuals who have served their time, who have returned back to society, or trying to be productive citizens? Why do you think they push back so hard for these individuals getting their right to vote again?
Well, it's very, very obvious. I think that Roy Moore is one that made it very plain. He knew something evidently that we didn't know, especially by him being a judge.
Yeah.
And by him being a judge, stating the fact and putting in the papers and all that the Democrats were using me as a catalyst, I'm Obama's lapdog to get the blacks and the Democrats to vote out of prison and jails. Now, that should have sent an alarm to a lot of people, because by him being a judge, what are you telling us? That you only locked up blacks and Democrats? Hello, somebody.
I think we know the answer to that.
Okay, so that's why they're very much alarmed, because it comes to a point to where what people don't realize, and I heard you say returning citizens earlier. Well, in the South, we're not returning citizens. We do not get our rights back time we get out of prison. And so that's why I had to do the lawsuit of moral turpitude. In the 1901 Constitution, the Moral Turpitude Act states that if you commit a crime not involving moral turpitude, then you should have never lost your right. So for 106 years before I did my lawsuit in 2008, they were taking people's voting rights unconstitutional.
Wow.
So we have to look at the fact is that when, your birth certificate makes you a citizen, but you don't have full citizenship unless you have your voting rights. You cannot, when you lose your voting rights, you cannot run for office, you can't do jury selection or anything like that. So these are the things that they're really alarmed about, because now we have our full citizenship and our right to vote on even them being in office. And, for those people out there say your votes don't count or it don't matter, yeah, evidently it do. In order for him to attack me like that and be so concerned about felon voting, evidently our votes count. We all count.
Exactly. And instead of the Republican Party or individuals creating policies or recommendations that actually benefit this population, they look for ways to continue to disenfranchise them in many.
Exactly. And, one of the things that Roy Moore said is that most of the people that's locked up or got felony convictions will vote democratically. So that means the Republican Party does not have the interest of the people that they're concerned. Now, it alarms me when you see that, because when everybody was out here on crack and all that, it was a criminal crisis.
Yeah.
Now here comes the opioid situation, and it's a health crisis with Trump and them, because it flipped the scale on white folks. Well, whites always use drugs 15 to 20 times more than blacks, but blacks always went to jail 15 to 20 times more than whites. Well, that is changing. And because that is changing, maybe they'll have a different attitude toward it later on. But right now, they know who they targeted. They know what they was doing. They know who they came out with the drug war, and how the drug war was going to lock up and disenfranchise the same black people that got their voting rights in 1965 when Nixon invented the drug war in 1971. 6 years later, they knew what they were doing. It was all a plan. So if the plan was to disenfranchise us and keep us disenfranchised, that's why they're so concerned when our voting rights come back up.
Yeah, it's always funny when you think about, I've gotten into a number of arguments with individuals who are part of the Republican Party, and they're always like, we are the party of Lincoln. And I'm always like, okay, well, that's cute, but you're also the party of Donald Trump and Roy Moore. And since you freed the slaves, you look for ways to disenfranchise them. So none of that really plays out if in 2007 still there are not opportunities for individuals who have served their time. Even those, I feel like, who haven't served their time, I don't think there's any reason that anyone should be, their right to vote should be taken away if you are, in fact, a full citizen in this country. So just to kind of rewind back to the biggest issue that I think is going to may or may not be the tipping point for this election in Alabama is the fact that what's happening with Roy Moore. He has been accused multiple times of not only sexual assault, of harassment, but we're also talking about pedophilia. So tell me how, and even in Alabama, people can still justify his actions and still have a conversation around his capability of even holding office.
Well, it just shows, and it really, really reveals the double standard. Mm-hmm. I've been out here shaking the leaves and chopping down the trees and telling everybody about the double standards and how, this judicial system down here, has one set of rules for whites, another set of rules for blacks, but, another set of rules for the rich and another set of rules for the poor. And, Donald Trump comes and endorses him. The governor, Kay Ivey, says, I'm going to vote for him anyway. And so that just proves our double standard.
Yeah.
We don't even have to question that anymore. But one thing that I do want to say is that when Donald Trump came into office, he drew the line in the sand. Now, he draws the line in the sand with white people to where they got to choose either they're racist or they're not. He draws the line in the sand for even some black folks who said, well, we don't need Al Sharpton. We don't need the Kenny Glasgow's. We don't need them no more. Racism is over. Why they keep saying that? Well, when he came, he made it evident that it still exists. So, these are things that people it's so evident to people that people are looking at. But when you have a pedophile, that bothers me.
Yeah.
And everybody justifies that. It shows how bad and how immoral our country has truly gotten, especially when people that we have chosen to represent us or not chosen to represent us who are sitting in these seats are saying, I'm going to vote for him anyhow. And he was a prosecutor at the particular time that he supposedly was messing with this 14-year-old girl. And he, at first, if you remember, when he first came out, he said, well, I had the parents' permission. And then it was later on when he started saying and denying it.
Yeah.
So we have a real problem here when people just think it's all right for certain folks, but here we'll attack Bill Cosby, here we'll attack Al Franklin, here we'll attack Congressman John Conyers, but it don't apply to Roy Moore because we need him to fill this seat. Okay, so where are your standards? Mm-hmm. Where are your standards?
Where's the line in the sand?
Turn around, that's it. And then you want to turn around and get upset with those of us who are formerly and currently incarcerated because the law states that under the Moral Turpitude Act, now look at the irony of that. the Moral Turpitude Act, and here you have no morals, and here you are a judge that's supposed to be enforcing and upholding the law and wants to go against the law because you don't like it when it don't apply to you.
So what precedent is this going to set? If Roy Moore at the end of today turns out to be the elected candidate, what precedent will this set not only for the Republican Party but for politics in America and for the soul of America, really, that we can elect? I mean, electing Donald Trump is a crime in itself, but what will this say about us?
I was going to say that.
Yeah,
I was
right?
going to say that. I don't think Roy Moore is going to take precedence over the one we already set with Donald Trump. I think we already just went overboard.
Yeah, we're definitely at the bottom of the barrel.
But what is going to happen here in Alabama, I can tell you exactly what we're going to be doing. We're going to be concentrating on 2018. I'm going to be honest with you. We are still registering people to vote inside and outside these jails and prisons. We are registering people to vote that don't even know they have the voting rights yet. We got 290,000 people that are disenfranchised in the state of Alabama. We're trying our best to target approximately 200,000 who are able to vote and don't even know it. We are going into Florida and help them down there get their ballot initiative, because I was the first one that helped get it done in 2006 and 2007 along with Musa Lehman and Elton Edwards, and we're going to continue this fight. And what I want to say to your people today is that in 2018, wake up the sleeping giant. We have a lot of people that are in your jails, that are in your city jails with misdemeanors, that are in your county jails that have not went to court yet, that still could vote. That's a voting block that none of us have ever tapped into, that we already got the example. Let us be the model for you. We have accomplished it, and that can make the difference. That's what we need to concentrate on now, because another thing that Donald Trump did do, as well as him drawing the line in the sand, he made us come from a consorted front into a united front. You got more white folks and black folks and unified folks that want to come together and be together and fight against this mess that we got going on than ever before. I have never seen as much excitement and enthusiasm about voting on both sides of the fence or across all racial lines, except for when President Barack Obama ran the first time.
So you're saying that we should recognize that really this is a moment of opportunity to come together, to unify in our common interest. One, to fight against what's happening both in Congress, but more so what's happening in our states, to ensure that everyone has the ability to be inclusive in this process, and we create opportunities for them. So really, Roy Moore is definitely a problem, but we really should be preparing for 2018 and 2020, because as you mentioned, it's like we can't afford to lose any more seats in the House or the Senate. We can't afford for Donald Trump to spend 2 terms as a president. And so is the goal then to recognize that if Roy Moore is elected, to then use him as an example of everything that's wrong with the Republican Party? Or is it an opportunity to call to action and to raise more people who have been previously disenfranchised to want to talk more or to want to vote and be a part of the process, if that makes sense?
Well, I wouldn't say it's either or. I would say it's both and. It's both and. It's for us to raise more consciousness to people that are disenfranchised and raise more consciousness amongst ourselves that are not disenfranchised, in order for us to unify and use this as a catapult to keep going. I had a big conversation with Asha Bondelli up there in New York, who's over Drug Policy Alliance, who's been with us throughout this whole tenure. Drug Policy Alliance, Gabriel Say, all them, they've been with us since 2003 when I first started this. One of the things that she said is that we are in a moment that if we capture this moment, this excitement, this enthusiasm, and this unity that we have right now and hold it throughout 2018, we will make a difference in so many of our local elections that we would change Congress regardless if we do it one by one in Congress itself. That is something for us to look at. That's something for us to look at. And one good thing about the lawsuit that I got to where they could vote out of prison in Alabama is that they don't vote from where they housed at. They vote from where they come from by absentee ballot. So we'll be able to effectuate all local elections. Now, here's another thing what gets me. We have a Republican governor that signed the bill. They turned my lawsuit into a bill. Republican governor signed it. Republican Secretary of State helped initiate it and define what crimes were moral turpitude and what crimes were not. So the party is really, really against itself. Now, the Bible said, a house divided shall not stand. It may take a little time, but they definitely divided, and they're not going to stand.
I mean, the question is the house on fire?
Oh, yeah. This is burning up.
The house is burning.
And then you have to look at the guy who fought me the most. If y'all do a Google and look at the guy who fought me the most back from 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way up till now, is going to benefit from the same lawsuit and law that he fought against me profusively about. And that's Mike Hubbard. Mike Hubbard was the chairman of the Republican Party and the Speaker of the House. And now he's in prison with 13 counts of fraud. But because of the same lawsuit and law that he fought me about so profusively, now he can vote. Ain't that something? God works in mysterious ways.
I mean, you're seeing incidents of that all over the country. I mean, individuals who are against transgender got upseated by a transgender elected official now, or individuals who previously denied a gay couple the right to register their marriage certificate now is about to be challenged by that same person. So it's interesting, as you mentioned, how life is being very ironic in regards to the political process, that those who previously felt left out of the conversation, disenfranchised, oppressed, are now kind of using the very systems that were against them to raise up and to also kind of push back against the traditional institutions of power that have previously neglected their voices and their issues. So if there's one thing that you would say to Alabama voters at this very critical time, because we have less than voting stops at what time today?
It stops at 7 o'clock today.
7 o'clock today is the last time to let your voice be heard in Alabama about whether or not you want Roy Moore or Doug Jones to represent you. What would you say to voters in Alabama about, one, why they should vote against Roy Moore, and two, why they should, if they previously thought about not voting, why they should show up to the polls?
Well, first of all, Roy Moore said that America was great.
During
the only
slavery.
time America was great was during slavery. That alone should be enough for anybody with any kind of morals, values, or ethics about themselves, white, black, purple, or polka dot, to vote against Roy Moore. Beyond his pedophilia, beyond all the rest of that, this man he don't want women to have rights. See, because what people got to understand is during slavery, women didn't have rights either. And we talking about white women, okay? Let's make it plain. So this man don't want nothing but heterosexual white men that own property to be able to vote. That is his frame of mind. That's first of all. Second of all, the reason it's so important for people in Alabama to vote today amongst any other time, we didn't get a chance with Jeff Sessions. He was appointed. And we know what we are living with and up under here in the state of Alabama being a red state. But we have an opportunity, if we don't change it blue, we can at least make it pink or purple. Yeah. So it's time for us to stand up as a people. And if you're tired of, as I am, of this double standard and all this immoral acts against humanity within itself in this boiling pot that we call the state of Alabama, then it's time for you to jump out that pot and raise your voice, because your voice is your vote. It's your God-given. And what we say at the Southern Movement Assembly and what we say at the formerly incarcerated and convicted people's movement is that we all count. But we don't count if we don't vote.
That's so real. That's so real. And yeah, it's not I keep trying to tell people it's not a privilege. It is a right that everyone should have access to. So on the issue of Donald Trump, before I let you go, because it's kind of hard to have a conversation about Roy Moore and not look at the larger picture of our president, our chief officer of the country, someone who thinks he's above the law. He ain't my president, because I did not vote for him at all. I refuse to claim that, sir. But on the issue of Donald Trump, Don't you find it interesting that even those in the Republican Party who previously pushed back against Donald Trump are now kind of falling in line, even in light of all the evidence that is now coming out against him to show that, one, he not only colluded with Russia, but also he has his own claims against him regarding sexual assault, and but still now all of a sudden the support for him has grown. Why do you think that is, and do you think that for me, I think that is actually the death of the Republican Party, is that they are now setting the standard that Donald Trump is the norm for their party, and now Roy Moore is almost continuing to tarnish any credibility that they had. So, what do you think of this now turning point, this 180 that many Republicans are doing to support him in office and his policies and practices?
I had a conversation with my brother, Al Sharpton, and I constantly call him all the time to get some advice, mentorship, and stuff like that. And me and him both reverted to the Bible. Every empire, the Roman Empire, Abyssinian Empire, the Babylonian Empire, every empire, always set itself on fire when evil, oppression, the person in leadership became just that. And what happened is the subjects, and those subjects become that Congress, his subjects started conceding to his evilness. And that's when the corruption became so seething that the government would always cause itself to fail. So it's really history repeating itself. We are witnessing here. And God has given the power back to the people. In 2004, they used They used Florida and said they took all those votes away and said those people were felons. And Bush got in. 2000 in Florida, that's when they did it. In 2004, they did it in Ohio and said it was felons. Well, God, he works in mysterious ways and probably is very, very comical, because now they can't use that in Alabama because I got a lawsuit with felons could vote. So you can't take them votes and say they were felons, because felons have the right to vote now.
Exactly.
What I say to that is that the Republican Party is trying to redeem itself, but you cannot redeem yourself with the same amount of corruption and evil. So those people that are turning around and supporting Trump and all that now is looking at, well, we can't beat them, let's join them. And I'm telling them, I hate it for you, because sometimes we put ourselves in a position where we join people in jail, we join people in hell, we join people in the fire, and we join people against people. And God has given the power back, as He's done so many years and so many times under each empire. He's given the power back to the people. And that's what you see happening now.
Well, on that note, how can folks get in contact with you? How can they stay up to date what's happening? And also, how can they potentially use their voice similar to you to ensure that those who have been disenfranchised get their ability to vote again?
Well, they get in touch with us by going to theordinarypeoplesociety.org. Theordinarypeoplesociety.org. They could give us a call, 334-671-2882. 334-671-2882. How they could raise the voices of those who are formerly and currently incarcerated. Go to your jails, go to your prisons, start visiting, start doing programs, start implementing pre-release programs and raising the voice of those who are directly impacted. As Glenn Martin says up there in New York, Darrell Ackerson in North Carolina, Darcy Nunn in California, Susan Burton, and all the rest of my colleagues, Norris Henderson, that work with me on the steering committee. As we all say, those of us who are closest to the problem
Or closest to the
are
solution.
the ones that are closest to the solution. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for joining us this morning. And I'm a huge fan of Reverend Al Sharpton, so clearly activism runs in the family. We're going to have you on again, and hopefully in much happier times, and hopefully with much happier results coming out of Alabama. So thank you again for all your work. And as you all know, my name is Jamira Burley, filling in for Mark Thompson on Make It Plain. We're going to take a quick break and come back. But for those who want to join the conversation, please feel free to call 188. I'm sorry, that's 866-997-4748. Again, that number is 866-997-4748. This is Make It Plain.
Never give up. This is Resistance Radio, and these are your sounds of freedom.
Hey y'all, thanks for joining. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back. Stay tuned, share the link. I'm filling in for Mark Thompson, as you already heard. He'll be joining us back at the 8 o'clock hour to give us updates to where he's at on the scene, out in the streets. So with that being said, just give us a few seconds. We're actually going to be joined with the founder of Me Too, who, as you already know, is one of Time's Persons of the Year, and she's dope. She's dope. I met her a few years ago in Philly, of course, because Philly's dope. But you're going to hear from her. She has her story, what's happening with the movement, how people can get involved, and more specifically, what's happening with the culture of sexual violence in America and how we can continue to keep people, hold them accountable. So we'll be back.
This is
Make it plain.
Make it plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make it plain.
Get woke.
Well, that was an interesting song. If y'all wanted to hear that, go on to Facebook. I'm sorry for the Facebook listeners. If you wanted to hear that song, you'll have to tune in to SiriusXM.us/progress, and you'll be able to hear that very lively song. But for those who don't know, hey, good morning on this Tuesday morning. I'm much more enthusiastic than I normally am this early. I haven't had coffee. I actually haven't had coffee for weeks. So pray for me in this process of me trying to get healthier. But as I mentioned earlier, my name is Jamira Burley, filling in for Mark Thompson. This is Make It Plain. And for those who want to join the conversation, just feel free to call in. That number is, what is it? Oh, that number is 866-997-4748. Again, that's 866-997-4748. Earlier we were talking about the election in Alabama and about the election of Roy Moore versus to be absolutely honest, I'm just confused by today and how Roy Moore is even still in the election, considering everything that has happened and continue to come out about this man. But, Donald Trump is president, so anything is possible. But which is even more important why we have our next guest on the line. I had the pleasure of being on MSNBC with her this past Sunday, and it was great to reconnect with someone that lived in Philadelphia, that loves Philadelphia as much as I do, and that is doing some amazing work. And for those who don't know, the Me Too movement is much larger than a hashtag, and it's really a movement, and it's been doing work for a long time that hasn't just been developed just because Time magazine decided to recognize it as one of the Persons of the Year. And so I'm excited to be joined with the founder, Tarana Burke. Are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, how are
Hi,
you?
how are
Sorry to
you?
have you up this early.
Oh no, it's okay.
Well, thanks for joining us so short notice. I mean, I only found out that I was hosting yesterday. So when they asked me who did I want on, I was like, duh.
That's so sweet.
No, I'm super excited that you were able to join, especially considering the election that's happening in Alabama, especially considering kind of the political conversation around sexual assault, sexual violence, and so many different facets of life, from politics to the media to what's happening in classrooms and on street corners. And so, as the founder of the Me Too movement, for those who don't know, the Me Too movement didn't just start yesterday. Tell us a little bit about why you created it. What are the work? What is really the foundation of the work that you're doing, and why more people should be more concerned about sexual violence and not look at this as a fade of something that is just happening now?
Yeah, so I mean, Me Too started more than 10 years ago when I was living in Alabama, actually.
Wow, talk about it.
Yeah, ironically enough, I used to live in Montgomery and then Selma, Alabama, and I worked with young girls there. My best friend at the time, a woman named Shantae Smith, and we were trying to figure out how to connect with the girls in our program. We had another youth program, and just started realizing, like, these girls need more specific attention than what they were getting through the program. And so we decided to start Just Be. But when we did that, we also, it's not funny at all, but we started encountering so many stories of sexual violence that, and sometimes the girls didn't even know how to describe what they had experienced, but we knew as adults and as survivors that what they had experienced was sexual violence. And so it just became really apparent that we had to craft something. And I already had, just from some of my own experiences, just a vision of always wanting to do this work. And this gave us an opportunity to do it, particularly where we were. And, and I try not to describe it in this way to make it seem like there's something more wrong with the South than other places, because that's not true. We know that sexual violence is pervasive, and it's in every part of the country, every part of the world.
Yeah.
But in the community that we lived in, it just felt like it was sort of an epidemic. We saw it happening in the schools, we saw it happening in the churches, we saw it happening in the communities and neighborhoods in all kind of various ways. And so Me Too was about trying to connect with survivors and start helping people find an entry point to healing. Because it just, in some ways, it's like fighting against sexual violence is so multi-layered, right? We need people who are doing policy work. We need people who are doing work with survivors directly. We need people who are doing community work, education, and all of these different places. Our place, where we found our niche, was working directly with young survivors and helping them realize that they weren't alone and helping to really shine light on the epidemic in our community.
No, I think that's so important that you just mentioned, because I think in my work with young people, I haven't done much work with with victims of sexual violence, but I think oftentimes young people assume that they're the only ones going through their circumstances, and that it's hard for them to really talk about it because they feel like, one, they feel ashamed, but also they feel like no one else can relate to what's going on. Do you feel in the work that you do working with the young women that the more they talk about it, the more they, one, find opportunities to heal and also realize that they're not alone?
Oh, absolutely. That's absolutely what happened. I mean, this just from my own experience, I think I spent my childhood thinking that I was isolated in the things that happened to me, that I was the only one. As a matter of fact, I went through several years thinking it was me and Maya Angelou. Like,
wow.
When I realized she was a real person, after I read I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings, I thought, okay, well, there's another one. And we know people who work with young people, people who have children, you have children in your family, young people, the way their minds work at that age, they're still trying to formulate and understand. They don't have a lot of logic around certain things. And so it seems illogical to think, of course, you're not the only person in the world, but what else would they know? And so for us, when we started having circles and discussions about it and telling our own stories, and actually we use pop culture at the time. I had been using Gabrielle Union's story of being a survivor of sexual assault for years because she was one of the few Black celebrities who spoke openly about it. But like, when you see the magic that happens when a young person, a young Black girl, hears that Gabrielle Union or Oprah Winfrey or Maya Angelou also went through something, was violated sexually in some kind of way, but then became Oprah, but then became Gabrielle Union. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a connection that happens that just is like, wow, it creates possibility for them.
And also makes them realize that they can overcome it. Like, they don't have to be a victim of their circumstances. Like, there's more to them, their story than this one incident.
Yeah.
So over the last few months, I think it's extremely positive, I think, in seeing how much the Me Too movement, or at least people's awareness of the Me Too movement, has blown up over the last few months. One of the things I thought was really interesting about looking at your Facebook page is that in the About section, it mentions that 17,700,000 women have reported sexual assault since 1998. And I think what I saw over the last few months, and many people using the Me Too hashtag as a result of their own kind of awakening and coming out of what has happened to them, is that I mean, you would probably agree that number is probably even larger than that, of the women who have been impacted by sexual violence. One, because they may have not considered those circumstances as being sexual violence, or two, because they were so ashamed to even talk about it. What would you say is so important about this moment that so many people have been willing to kind of share their truth?
So the very concept of Me Too is we use a concept called empowerment through empathy, right? Meaning that people are empowered by the empathy that they're shown by another person, and that really is just sort of a extra way of saying people need to know that they're not alone. And so I think what has happened, particularly in the last 2 months with this movement online, is these are some of the deepest, darkest secrets that people hold. These are things that people, but you want to give birth to those secrets. People really don't want to hold this. It's something that you want to, for some people, you want to kind of scream it from the rooftops, because when you speak things out loud, it makes them more real, right? It makes it, and one of the things that happens when you survive sexual violence is you question yourself, like, did this happen to me? Is this real? All of these various questions. And so I think seeing other people, we underestimate the power of the internet sometimes, because it's just like when people can talk to strangers and they can't talk to their family, that phenomenon. And so you see these other people and you think, oh my God, not only am I not alone, there are millions of us. And I think it just emboldens people to come forward and you don't have to say much, right? You don't have to come forward and give details and go into descriptions and data. You can just literally just say Me Too. And there's enough people who get it, who understand, and that can be the whole conversation.
No, that's so real. I want to take a caller. I think there's John from Kentucky. And John, you have a question or a comment for our guest?
I want to know a couple of things, but first, where did we start going from, as an American or Americans? Did we go from accusations being guilty to being found guilty in a court of your own peers? Secondly, I'm 55 years old now. As a child, I was a victim of sexual abuse. And I told my parents immediately when I was 6 years old what happened. And, of course, my parents handled that from there.
Yeah.
All this here, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, well, when I was in the service, I flew through LAX. So if I just went around saying, in 1981, Dianne Feinstein molested me, that just sounds crazy. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, I mean, what it's doing, it's degrading anybody that's telling, that's really had something bad happen to them. Because now it's just 24/7. Everybody's being finger pointed at, but nobody's ever being found guilty. We're taking an accusation as guilty, and that ain't America.
Well, thank you, John, for that comment. I'm going to let Tara. Do you want to touch on that first?
I mean, the only thing I would say to that is that thinking, the way this caller phrased it and talked about how people are coming forward is really is problematic, actually, because when people disclose and how they disclose is deeply personal.
Mm-hmm.
And so while I
am the people, I am the people. It happened to me.
Yes,
No, but
people,
let her finish. If you can, John, if you can let her finish.
Right. You are one person. And I commend you for having the wherewithal at that age to come forward and say something. But you are one person, and that's your one experience. And the experiences of other survivors is quite different. There's so many people who don't have the wherewithal to come forward, who don't feel like they'll be supported, who don't feel like they'll be believed, and so they hold those secrets. And so at this moment, what you're seeing is that when people realize that they might have an opportunity to be believed, they might be supported, they feel safe enough to come forward and say something. And so you can't judge other people by your individual experience. Just like there are, for every one of you that came forward, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other 6-year-old boys who didn't say anything. And that's okay, because they're not obligated to say anything. And when we live in a country that shames survivors, we live in a world, not even just our country. The people are socialized not to believe people. Adults don't want to believe these things happen to their children. Family members don't want to believe these things happen to their siblings or other family members. So it's a very complicated thing. You can't automatically decide somebody is lying because of the length of time it took for them to come forward. That's just not how it works.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at any traumatic incident that's ever happened to anyone, there's no universal response. People react different, and that's for a host of different reasons: how they were brought up, what support mechanisms they actually have in place, what actually happened to them isn't like the same, like it's not cookie cutter. I also think it's important. I think there's a conversation that needs to happen around. I mean, his first point was around what about innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
I think there's definitely a conversation around that, but also another congresswoman, I can't remember which one, talked about it. When there's a pattern of practice, which is what we've seen with Donald Trump, what we've seen with Roy Moore, when there's a pattern of practice, it's almost like you there's no way you can overlook it, particularly as it pertains to there's being evidence and supported document and witnesses to back that up. It's kind of hard to say, oh, we need to consider that person to be innocent until the court of law decides that they're guilty. But then is the conversation also around the fact that so often enough, as you mentioned, people are automatically supposed to assume that the woman is lying, that particularly the longer she waits to comes out. And so that frame of mind in the work that you do, how do you think that has now that so many people have started to come forward and tell their story, and the diversity of stories through the media, how do you think that has helped to shape people's holding individuals accountable, those including the president of the United States, but also in their everyday lives? Do you feel that there is a disconnect between what's happening on mainstream media that you see like Al Franken and Roy Moore being called to task versus like in everyday lives when you're, for instance, if there's a librarian or a woman that works in a coffee shop, do you think that she still has the kind of leverage to hold her boss accountable, or do you think there's still more work to be done?
There's a ton more work to be done, and I think I've mentioned this before, but I've been following what's happening in Sweden. And in Sweden, they took the Me Too movement really to a whole other level, in that there are over 100 other hashtags that have come out, similar to how we had Me Too Congress or Me Too Church.
I'm sorry.
Here.
Can you hold that thought? We're going to take a quick break and bring you right back. Okay. So those we're going to join the conversation when we get back. Stay on the line. This is Jamira Burley filling in for Mark Thompson. This is MIP. I love Christmas music. It's the best.
Oh, tell them to switch to the radio, because this isn't on the stream.
If you want to hear the music, join onto the radio station and you can hear all the amazing Christmas music.
Do you want
I need coffee so bad. No. I am 10 days into not drinking coffee.
right.
I'm not doing it. I'm not. I do feel like I get a caffeine. Do you get those when you don't have coffee for a long time? Caffeine headaches?
I mean, since we're talking on mic, absolutely.
Hey, tell
Yeah,
the people who
show
you
between
are.
the show. This is Andrew on the mic.
On the ones and twos.
Yeah. No, there was actually a period of time I used to work on a channel called Dr. Radio, and I would come in at 6 a.m. Just like I do now, and I was really trying to not drink coffee.
Yeah.
And then I started coming in at 6 a.m. and I was like, this isn't gonna work.
Wait, is that the show where people were calling about their medical
Yeah.
issues? What's the craziest caller you ever received?
Someone's calling our studio right now.
Hey, studio call. Is it Mark?
probably is?
Mark is going to join us, y'all. He's on site. Hold it.
Yeah, he has my cell phone number. We can call the studio.
Of course
All
he
right.
did.
Yeah, I'll get you set up. Do you want us?
This
to
is
drop
what
the email?
happens when people learn just now how to use Boomerang. They also just now
Okay.
learn how to use
Jamira,
phones.
Say goodbye on live stream. We're gonna have to set up.
Okay, bye, y'all. Mark is going to join us. Watch him. Go to his page. Make it plain. Mark Thompson. Talk to you soon. Bye.